Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host of Networking RX. Welcome back for those who've listened in the past, and thank you for those who are tuning in for the first time. For those who don't know, who haven't listened, been following, I have a mix of shows. Some it's me just kind of giving reflections and sharing information on professional relationships and business networking. Other times I will have a guest on, and today is a guest day, and so I will talk about my guest here in a minute. But before we move on, I want to just remind people we're looking to add quality people to our stable of franchisees. This is a unique franchise opportunity in that it's geared for aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals to add on to what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else for just a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week. Our franchisees operate the AmSpirit Business Connections program. The rest of their week, they're accountants, attorneys, financial advisors, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. If you're interested, contact me. There's an email in the show notes, or you can use the one we provide quickly at the end of the podcast. Today, I have on the program with me JD Gershbein. JD is on Zoom with me from the windy city of Chicago, or near Chicago. I'll let him share a little more about that. But since 2006, JD has been on the forefront of advancing ideals of the digital world, in inspiring individuals and companies to harness the power of online media to elevate their profiles, engage in communities, and win new business. He is widely regarded as one of the world's top LinkedIn strategists, and that's a big reason, probably the main reason why I wanted to have him on. He's a thought leader in the areas of personal branding, social networking, and social entrepreneurship. He's a business psychologist, speaker, facilitator. He has educated audiences all over the globe on how to create competitive advantage through social channels. He's been featured on Fox TV News, WGN TV, CBS News, WGN Radio, and he's contributed work to Huffington Post, Success Online, NBC, and Forbes. This always puts pressure on people. He's a student of comedy, so you expect him to he's going to make us laugh. I don't know. That's why I say it puts pressure. But he's part of the new media production at Second City in Chicago, and he's the architect of his own edutainment platform through which he's developed a podcast, an original web-based TV series. JD, can you fill that in?
Have I really done all that? Were you ad-libbing that, or was that?
No, it's all here.
That?
Well, we fact-checked it. We fact-checked everything, so it's all there.
Well, that's a lot to live up to. I'm going to do my best to make sure we cover all aspects of that introduction. But as of right now, I'm here to validate everything you said in that piece. So,
well, like I indicated in the introduction, I really want to have a conversation with you about LinkedIn, about social media, because it's a question I get all the time, JD. Why do I need to network? I'll be on LinkedIn. People are in transition. People are trying to grow a business, and it really is kind of a neat ideal to think, okay, on LinkedIn there's 500 million people. Why do I need to go anywhere? And then the other question I get is as well, what is social media going to do to networking? And my answer to those are really nothing. It's network.
Same here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sports.
Yeah, right. Social media, LinkedIn is a tool, much like the phone is a tool. We networked before we had the phone, and it just allowed us to go further and faster. And social media has kind of added a dimension to that. We can talk to people globally instantly. I've got a call later with a woman down in Australia. It's Tuesday there. we're recording on a Monday. It's Tuesday where she's at, but we've connected, and this will be the first time we've actually spoken, and that's what all this allows us to do. So anyhow, your take. Let's talk social media here.
Well, I think we've arrived at the point, Frank, and dear listeners, where we're really trying to piece together the relationship between real world and virtual world networking. There's a lot of pressure on us to be networkers right now, and there's a lot of pressure on us to be storytellers right now. So when you combine the aspects of good face-to-face human communication and what we're learning about the social networks as to how they kind of bridge this gap between our distances, we really have to be more judicious and assessing of our own value and the way we communicate that value to people. When you're at a networking event, you're in the moment. There's a different dynamic than just sitting behind a computer screen, getting a little bit of keyboard courage and putting yourself out there in a certain way to be taken at face value. So my study as a social scientist and business psychologist is to really get a handle on the behavioral communication that's involved in the social networks and how we can leverage information we see online into real world gain. And I systematically advanced the notion of what I call breaking the plane between the virtual and real worlds, which means creating a kind of business style where we can seamlessly weave between the physical, feet on the floor, eye contact, handshake world, and this social network. And regarding the business conversation, that of course is LinkedIn. So since 2006, I've really focused on the LinkedIn platform and how that has abled professionals in all walks of business to generate meaningful conversations from which they can create sales moments or information to advance their careers.
So 2006, I mean, early in your, I would say career, but early into this leg of your career in 2006, a good deal of what you did early on was just educating us what LinkedIn was. I don't think I got on until 2007.
Yeah, nobody knew what the hell we were doing back then. I mean, it was a bunch of people meeting at coffee shops, and I was kind of facilitating, and we all had our laptops up and getting eye strain and looking at the pages and going, what the hell is this? And very quickly, and I mean very quickly, I kind of branded within my circle as a go-to resource where people could go and ask questions about LinkedIn. They all knew I was into it. Right. There wasn't really a business or a livelihood created around it yet, but we were just kind of figuring it out. And a couple of months had to go by and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in developing the infrastructure for my consultancy. But eventually I started getting a few nibbles, and people would ask me to come in and educate their networking organization or their group. And slowly but surely, people started to engage me to write their LinkedIn profiles. So I got kind of this baptism under fire where I was actually providing a service for people who were still, again, all of this in beta. Nobody really had the answers, but we were interested enough in this thing to know that it had value. We were just kind of around it trying to figure it out. So I've just kind of been on this ride, this journey as we call it these days, and I've just measured my own self-awareness and my own value against what I see out there and apply myself. I've kind of carved out a place for myself in internet society, and my own LinkedIn presence allows me to systematically and methodically communicate with people all over the world that I'd otherwise have no shot at speaking with. So it's been transformational in that aspect and in many other aspects, including the ability to eventually carve out a livelihood and help business people become better by helping them edge toward this version of themselves that we create for them online.
Right. What are some of the mistakes you see people making out there? Not so much in the nuts and bolts of LinkedIn, but just in the usage of LinkedIn, generally speaking.
You know, as a positive psychologist, Frank, I don't like to harp on mistakes.
Okay, all right.
But for the purpose of this conversation, I will, because so many of my peers and the so-called experts out there do. They focus on blunders and errors in judgment and things that will implode your career if you do
Right.
them. You know what? My goal is I would rather be the guiding light than the voice of doom, and I'm always letting people know that they're on the right track. The biggest mistake at this stage is truly not participating and
Good point.
not playing an active role in some aspect of your business development or career development. And LinkedIn has shown to be instrumental. Best practices have kind of evolved. LinkedIn itself as a company has taken away certain features that were available early on, replaced them with others. We must remember that they are a publicly held company now since their IPO on May 19th, 2011. They've also been acquired by Microsoft, another behemoth. They're a Microsoft property. So
Right.
there are information aspects, tech aspects that we're constantly relearning, and LinkedIn themselves is constantly changing the landscape. So I'm out there helping people kind of shorten their learning curve, get them acclimated to the changes, and helping them find their own place in the digital world. It ain't easy for a lot of people. They just don't see themselves as being viable in the digital age, and they're trying to figure this out. They've tinkered with their profiles enough to know that they at least represent themselves well. They've connected with people. They've accepted invitations. They've extended invitations. They've built this thing called a network, and they're trying to figure out who inhabits it and where the opportunities are within that. So the big piece for me now is to really just keep people moving on that path and let them know that there's hidden potential, hidden value in everything they've done. And now they just have to realign their engagement dynamics and go out there and communicate. On LinkedIn, it's just people talking.
Yeah. Well, you made the point, and I think it's well taken. The big, there are no mistakes. The only mistake I think you said was not doing anything. And I had a conversation with a friend of my daughter who just graduated college. Her friend graduated,
Mm-hmm.
and just was looking for some advice on finding a job. And I was sharing with her and looked at her profile, and I said, well, you need to do this, this, and this. And I'm not an expert like you, but said, well, here, do this, this, and this, and you've only got 100 contacts. Why don't you try and build that out? And here's some ideas on how to build that out.
Right.
People. My daughter. My daughter's got 1,000.
Mhm.
And a lot of the people she knows, you probably already know. And she looked at me and she said, "Wow." Like I had just shown a caveman fire and said, I always looked at LinkedIn, or always thought LinkedIn was just a box that you checked. I have a LinkedIn. I've got a profile.
Right.
And you've basically shown me that there's something to it, things I can be doing. It's an ongoing, it's a networking event. It's going 24 hours a day. It's really what it is.
Well, I'm always leery when people call it a tool, because I've never ever called LinkedIn a tool. First of all,
Right.
It's an instrument. And the difference between a tool and an instrument, it seems easy, if one was pressed to supply a definition of both. But, a tool is something that you grab for in the box, the toolbox, when you need a fix.
Gotcha.
It's that screwdriver that feels good in your hand and the one that you can turn effortlessly and you're going to get the job done. Whereas an instrument is something that has to be manipulated or touched or engaged upon to produce a desired effect. A trumpet lying on a table makes no sound until air is passed through the valves, and the valves are depressed, and you make certain sounds, and you tighten or loosen the embouchure on your mouth against the valve. But again, you make the more you practice, the better sounds you're going to make. So in this day and age where people have a lot coming at them, most people want to just go in and out of LinkedIn with the least amount of wear and tear possible.
Right.
I am here to report that sadly there are no workarounds, there are no hacks, and there's no shortcuts. You have to physically go in there, create the experience, critically think your way through each user session. In the end, it's going to be your take, not mine, that drives your outcomes. What I do is just again, make sure that people understand where the stuff is, the good stuff, the killer, not the filler, and the stuff that's not going to lead them down a blind alley, but the stuff that's going to create measurable gain for the time that they're willing to spend on the site.
Well, what I tell people is it's about building relationships. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Of course.
And well, you say of course, I say of course. To us, it's obvious, but to a lot of people, it's like, I'm just going to build up my contacts, and nothing came from that. Well, of course, nothing came from that. Nobody knows you. Just because you're connected with somebody, doesn't mean you're going to do business with them, or they're going to do business with you.
I think that's the misnomer that you get on. You present this placeholder type profile that has some loose content about you, and that clients are going to tumble out of the sky.
Yeah.
Or job offers are going to just wondrously appear in your inbox. I think the work on LinkedIn involves the investment of time and equity into building key relationships. You're not going to build every single relationship.
Sure.
But it should at least, the work should at least align you and bring into focus the people who could be instrumental for you to move forward with. So say with every 10 connections, I mean, there are ratios involved in LinkedIn, and the metrics don't tell the whole story. But if you're taking 10 people onto your network, ideally you could be in meaningful conversations with 3 of them, and maybe one of them will pop and blossom, and the fruit of those efforts will be an introduction to a decision maker, an introduction to an alliance, an introduction to a hiring manager, purchasing manager. I mean, that's the essence of social networking, is taking this to the highest level and really massaging and finessing relationships where it's good for both parties. And there's a reciprocal element involved here. I mean, if you're going to ask, you have to be prepared to give.
Right.
And most people will tell you that in relationship building, you have to give first. But sometimes it's hard to give first, because the moment is there. You want to create it. You want to avail yourself and your network to people who are providing good deeds for you. So I think you start to build this kind of digital altruism where you're out there doing good deeds for each other and being the rising tide that lifts all boats, and supporting and validating and encouraging. And I think there's a lot of that going on LinkedIn. We see a lot of support-seeking behavior and validation behavior right now. People are promoting themselves ostensibly without fear of retribution at this point. It's like, here I am, I did this talk, or I went here, or my people shone in this competition, or we got the nod, we got the order. Cool. Cool for us, pat on the back, a little bit of gloating, a little bit of overt self-promotion, but again, it's just ways of putting out content that is designed to ideally build brand awareness. That's still the goal on LinkedIn, and put yourself in position to handle these types of interactions, because you can't build relationships if you don't have some kind of brand infrastructure in place.
Right. I agree. Do you encourage people to take conversations off LinkedIn, keep it all on LinkedIn? I mean,
as quickly as possible.
Okay. All right.
Well, interestingly, there are some conversations you have to keep on LinkedIn, because I have tried many times to take some of these threads off of LinkedIn, only to be met by a very aggressive firewall, and I can't get through to the person. Emails can wind up in a spam or a junk folder. So obviously what I do in my practice is, yes, if I'm connecting with you, which is what we actually did, Frank. I mean, we took our conversation offline pretty much seamlessly. We broke the plane between the virtual and the real world, and we've crossed over. We extrapolated a virtual experience into a phone conversation that led to another phone conversation that led to a series of emails that produced an appointment for taping your podcast.
Right.
So that's how it's done. And keeping conversations in play, keeping them in front of you, and being able to triage some of these moments and focus on the ones that you feel hold the most promise, that's the highest, most effective use of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And those are the relationships that are fun to build, because they're collaborative and they mean something to both parties. It's not just I'm selling you a product or service. It's, how can we co-create? How can we collaborate? How can we joint venture, do something together.
Right. Or who can I introduce you to that you might
Who
not
can
know?
I introduce you
Yeah.
to?
Yeah.
That kind of comes later, because
Yeah.
you can't do the introduction in my book until you know a little something about what people are trying to accomplish, and then you serve their agendas before you serve your own, and that's how you've earned the right for the ask.
Yeah. Well, I agree with all of that. I struggle on, well, I shouldn't say I struggle on LinkedIn. I struggle relative to LinkedIn with the messaging. Messages are lost. It's kind of a clunky system. You know,
Sure can be.
I love the fact that we took it off of LinkedIn rather quickly, because if you send me an email, I can tag it, I can put a reminder, I can get back to you. And with the LinkedIn system, it doesn't work as well. And I'm always fearful that I'm going to be missing something. In fact, last week I wrote a bunch of people. I've been very busy, wrote the names of a bunch of people I need to get back to, because I was so worried that those would get buried in other messages.
Yeah, well, LinkedIn messaging is a straight take from Facebook. So they did away with their true inbox structure, and they went to this messaging platform, which I think works. It's probably the optimal form of contact management that you could have on a platform like LinkedIn, because their CRM is greatly flawed. There's only 3 ways to categorize your LinkedIn connections: by first name, by last name, and by recently connected. And I'll get into a nice primacy recency strategy in a minute. But basically, I'm in the same boat as everyone else. And the bigger these networks get, the more difficult they are to manage. And the more difficult they are to manage, the more difficult it is to pick out where the areas of value may lie.
Right.
Because you may connect with someone, and right then and there you see something. But then you're sidetracked, you're distracted. Oh, look, a squirrel.
Right.
And then suddenly you're into other things. And yes, it's very easy for important interactions to fall through the cracks on LinkedIn. And that's why I keep a companion legal pad going. I literally just, if I'm pressed for time, I just write down the name of the person and a special category of conversations that I want to have, conversations that are, again, still in play, that have a flow to them, and we're advancing them towards some kind of mutually beneficial outcome. On the other hand, there's stuff that doesn't make it to the pipeline, what I call the conversation pipeline. And it just kind of either you're connected with them, nothing may really happen, they're probably not worth investing a lot of time and energy into, but maybe down the road, yes, you can always go back to them, or you may see them on your homepage, or they may come up in other conversations. And if you enjoy a lot of mutual connections, the connection in common piece is very important now too. You get the feeling that you're kind of part of a tribe and a true online community, and you can go back and message them later. So you may not build a lot of equity into a relationship early on, but what LinkedIn allows you to do is see these people on a regular basis, whether they're posting content or not. And then you go back, you find them, and you bookmark the conversation and say, hey, Frank, we've been connected on LinkedIn for a while. I'm in the process of reacquainting myself with my network. And then you do what I do, and that's end the message with an open-ended question like, oh, how's business? Now, if someone ends an email with how's business, ? Best regards, JD, what are you more inclined to do?
Respond.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's half the battle right there, is getting people to respond to your messages.
Right.
So invariably, I'm always ending emails with ? And that way I keep much more conversation with connections in play. I transport them to off LinkedIn email. And again, constantly breaking the plane between the virtual and the real worlds.
Okay.
My profile serves as me online.
Right.
It's not my shill. It's not a substitute. It's not a stand-in for me at networking events.
Right.
But it's my place in internet society where I am that guy. And if you meet me in the real world, shake my hand, get a little FaceTime with me, you're going to get that guy. You're not going to hear anything that's going to cause you to disconnect. There's no incongruence between me in front of you and the me that you see online. And that's where a lot of people, I think, kind of fall a little short and don't manage their expectations well on LinkedIn, because their profiles lack the luster, they're pale, they don't describe themselves very well in the content, and it causes this dissonance in the mind of who they're speaking with because they can't place the two versions of the brand.
Interesting. I like that. I like your little mantra, breaking the plane between basically online and the real world.
That's what I teach people to do. That's what I espouse, and I think that's the highest and most effective use of LinkedIn. Again, is to be able to find a place for yourself in LinkedIn society, in the ecosystem, and start to do things on a manageable basis. There's no textbook for any of this stuff, much as the so-called experts would have you believe. There's no way to generate a steady stream of leads without really working the site hard. And I think that's the downfall of the professional development industry as a whole, is that there are just too many gurus. And by the way, can I just say for the record, Frank, I hate that word guru.
Okay.
I don't like to be described as one, because that would imply that I know everything and I can teach everything. Same with expert. I never call myself an expert. I like the term thought leader. I play in the thought leadership space, and clients, colleagues, conference organizers, and executives have acknowledged me as a thought leader, which I feel is a much more a higher feeling of responsibility, because I can't lead people in the physical real world. I have to lead them from afar. I have to guide thought and opinion and beliefs. And I do that through content. I do it through live events. I speak. I do my own events. I produce shows. So I'm kind of out there just leading by example. And everything that I've said on this broadcast and everything I espouse, I've done. And I teach from experience.
Great. You kind of touched on it. What would be a good referral for you? We're kind of running short on time here. Good referral. You've got events that are happening.
Well, the way that I've described my opportunity is I love to collaborate with people who recognize the importance of personal branding. I do not have a target market. I could be working with a senior executive one day and a project manager in transition the next day.
Gotcha.
For me, it's anybody that wants to truly harness the power of LinkedIn, because I'm a no BS consultant. I like to have fun. And, but I'm a bit of an ass kicker at times, because it's not my take that's going to make the difference and move the needle for my clients. It's their accountability. They have to be present. They have to earn their connections. They have to earn the ability to take these conversations offline and choose a lane that they can go down, where they can kind of merge it into their own pipeline and sales system and get on their own talk track. But for me, I create the infrastructure by writing LinkedIn profiles. So anybody that truly wants to represent themselves in a realistic, believable, and powerful fashion on LinkedIn, those are my kind of folks, because we do great work together. And they gain literacy in LinkedIn customs and formalities, and they're in much better position to help others, because the others know who they are and they know what their strengths are. And we always play to our strengths on LinkedIn, don't we?
Yep. What would be the best way to get a hold of you? Same way I did, through your LinkedIn profile?
Would it surprise anybody, Frank, to let them know that I am on LinkedIn and that I maintain an account in good standing? I can be found on LinkedIn. You can find me under JD. That's like the law degree, but not really. JD. No periods, Gershbein, Gershbein. Find me on LinkedIn. Treat yourself to a nice search and maybe some time reviewing my profile. And I encourage anybody who's listening, your regular listeners, please connect with me. Let them know that you found me via this podcast.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. That's what I'm supposed to say right now at the end, right? Thank you for having me. It's good to be had.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.